You felt it one morning, a little sting in your Achilles or a dull ache in your elbow after a workout. You told yourself, give it a day or two. Fast forward 6 months, it still hurts. The tendon feels thick, cranky, and unpredictable. And you're starting to wonder, why won't this thing just heal? Here's the answer most people never get. Your tendon didn't stop healing, it got stuck in a loop, trying to repair, getting interrupted, trying again, until the tissue itself structurally changed. This video walks you through exactly what happens inside a tendon that never fully heals, day by day, week by week, and what the research says you can do to break that loop before it becomes permanent. This is general education, not medical advice. If you suspect a tendon injury that is getting worse, please see a sports doctor or physiotherapist. So let's start at the beginning. Day 0. You overload the tendon. Maybe it's too many pull-ups, a sudden jump in running mileage, a hard throw. Inside the tendon, collagen fibers, normally lined up like parallel cables, start to tear and fray. Within the first 48 hours, your body launches what researchers call the inflammatory phase. Blood vessels dilate, immune cells rush in, macrophages begin clearing out damaged tissue. This phase typically dominates the first 2 days after an acute tendon injury and can last several days, with swelling, warmth, and pain being normal signs that healing has been triggered. If you respect this phase, by reducing load and avoiding the exact movement that caused the problem, the body can move on. If you train through it at the same intensity, you keep adding micro-trauma on top of tissue that is already inflamed and fragile. That is where the loop begins. From around day 3 up to about 3 weeks, the tendon enters what researchers call the proliferation phase. Specialized cells called tenocytes and fibroblasts start pumping out new collagen, mostly type 3, which is weaker and more disorganized than the dense type 1 collagen in a healthy tendon. New blood vessels sprout into the injured area to feed this repair zone. Think of it as your body hastily throwing up scaffolding. It fills the gap, but it is not ready for heavy loads. Now here is where most people accidentally create a tendon that never heals. If you repeatedly overload this fragile repair tissue, sprinting, heavy lifting, explosive jumps, you outpace the repair process. Instead of maturing, the matrix stays swollen and disorganized. Tendon researchers call this stage reactive tendinopathy. The tendon is thicker, more water-rich, more painful, but still potentially reversible if you reduce load and allow adequate recovery. Somewhere after the first 2 to 3 weeks, the remodeling phase begins. Collagen fibers in the injured area start to reorganize, gradually aligning in the direction of normal stress. Weaker type 3 collagen is slowly replaced by stronger type 1. Cell density and blood vessel growth begin to drop. The tendon should progress toward a more normal load-bearing structure. This remodeling can continue for months, and up to a year for significant tendon injuries, which is why full recovery from tendon surgery typically takes 6 months or more, and non-surgical tendinopathy often needs 12 to 16 weeks of structured rehab. But here is the catch. If the tendon keeps getting overloaded without enough rest, or if it is never progressively strengthened in a smart way, that remodeling process stalls. Researchers describe this as tendon dysrepair, also called failed healing. The collagen matrix remains disorganized, the tendon thickens further, and there is chaotic growth of blood vessels and nerve fibers into the tendon tissue itself. At this stage, the tendon can be thicker on ultrasound, yet mechanically weaker. It stores and releases energy less efficiently, and pain can flare with relatively modest loads because the tissue is both sensitive and structurally compromised. If this cycle of overload, partial repair, and failed remodeling continues for months or years, the tendon can shift into what researchers call degenerative tendinopathy. Histology studies show areas of cell death, pockets filled with disordered matrix and abnormal nerve and blood vessel ingrowth. The tendon's ability to bear load is substantially reduced. It often feels thick, lumpy, or nodular, and pain becomes more chronic, less tied to specific workouts, more present in daily life. The continuum model of tendinopathy, one of the most cited frameworks in tendon research, suggests that once a tendon is deep into this degenerative zone, full return to a completely normal structure is unlikely. But, and this is important, function and pain can still improve significantly with proper rehab. This is what never healing really means. The biology tried to repair repeatedly, but constant overload, poor load management, or complete rest without progressive reloading kept the tissue stuck in a disorganized, weakened state. So what does this look like in real life? Week 1 to 2. You feel a localized ache during or after activity, maybe a little swelling or morning stiffness. But you can still train. You call it a niggle and carry on. Week 3 to 6, pain becomes sharper with certain movements. Warm-up might make it feel better temporarily, prolonging, but it flares later. The tendon may feel thick or tender to touch, and everyday tasks start to trigger it. Month 2 to 3, you modify exercises on bad days but spike the load on good days. The tendon never gets a consistent, progressive loading plan, just random stress. The matrix spends more time in disrepair than in clean remodeling. Beyond month 3, the pain pattern becomes chronic. You might have good and bad weeks, but explosive or high-load actions are unreliable. Imaging would often show thickening and disorganized collagen even without a full tear. And all of this is happening on a tissue that, under ideal conditions, already needs many weeks to months to complete its healing cycle. No amount of motivation compresses biology. So if rest alone isn't fixing it, what does the evidence actually support? For chronic tendinopathy, especially in the Achilles and patellar tendons, eccentric and heavy slow resistance exercises are among the most researched tools available. A 2023 systematic review and meta-analysis published in BMC Sports, Science, Medicine, and Rehabilitation confirmed that eccentric exercise produces significant pain reduction in patients with mid-portion Achilles tendinopathy compared to other forms of exercise. A narrative review of Achilles tendinopathy found that both heavy eccentric and heavy slow resistance programs led to large improvements in pain and function over 12 weeks, with some studies suggesting heavy slow resistance may match or outperform pure eccentric protocols. The key idea fits perfectly with the continuum model. In the reactive phase, reduce load. Avoid high-stress activities. Let the early repair settle. In the disrepair and degenerative phases, you need carefully dosed mechanical loading, slow, heavy, and controlled, to stimulate collagen to realign and the tendon to regain strength. Done properly, this breaks the never-healing loop by giving the tendon enough stimulus to remodel with enough rest between sessions for tissue to actually adapt. So here is what all of this means in practical terms. First, respect real timelines. Tendon tissue healing runs in weeks to months, not days. Plan your training around that reality. Second, identify and unload the exact aggravating movement. You usually don't need to stop all activity, but you do need to stop repeatedly hitting the tendon with the same peak load that injured it. Third, introduce structured loading, not random flares. Under guidance from a physio or a SMART program, use progressive, eccentric, or heavy slow resistance exercises to rebuild tendon capacity over 8 to 12 weeks or more. Fourth, watch for the good day trap. Feeling better one day does not mean the collagen has finished remodeling. Jumping straight back to maximum effort is how you drag the tendon back into disrepair and restart the loop. If you recognize yourself in this story, the tendon that has almost healed for months, your problem is probably not that your body forgot how to repair. It is that the repair process keeps getting interrupted. Use what you've learned here as a roadmap. Understand which phase your tendon is likely in. Stop feeding the overload cycle. Start a structured loading plan instead of guessing. And get a proper diagnosis from a qualified professional. Your tendon will not heal in 36 hours, whether it likes it or not. But given the right timeline and the right loading, it has a far better chance of healing in the next 3 to 6 months. So you're still lifting, running, and moving freely, years from now, instead of wondering what went wrong.